besieged Ravana. The monsoon wind swirled around a small hut hanging precariously on a mountain cliff. Another push by the roaring wind and the hut would plunge into the black torrents waiting hungrily below. Then we would be just specks of death washed ashore. It would have been better had it ended like that. But this was just the beginning of the end. Could I be obliterated from the leaves of history, just like that? Hadn't I a mission to fail? I didn't know it then, but I had been born to fulfill someone else's destiny. To allow someone else to become God. Huddled together with 3 siblings and a morose mother, I looked down at the brightly lit palace of my half-brother. It was quite near, yet a world apart. I had been there once, hidden behind a shawl of my poor, black mother, my younger brothers tugging at my fingers. My sister was lying limp like a dirty old rag, tired and hungry, on my mother's shoulder. We were poor, dirt poor. The only thing we had in abundance was poverty. And hunger. Also shame. As a last desperate effort, Mother dragged us to beg before her stepson, Kubra, the lord of all wealth, the richest man on earth. In the glitter of the palace and the sickening fragrance of abundance, we stood there with a begging bowl. We got our alms, a few pieces of gold and also many derisive glances from my stepbrother's wives. Our needs were few and his time was too precious to waste on us. A flick of his hand, some small change, and he thought no more of us. Until the day I reminded him of our existence quite rudely and loudly. But that happened much later. By then we had ceased being beggars. I gained my biggest asset from that arrogantly opulent palace of avarice and greed, my burning ambition. The fire of hunger would never quench the flames of ambition the palace ignited in me. I knew then that the world he owned and much beyond, would be mine and mine alone. Today might very well be the last day I will be with my mother. Tomorrow, if our small hut survives this torrential rain, we will start our journey. I believe there is a world out there to conquer. A better world awaiting us. My brothers and I never had an education to speak of. No Brahmin was ready to take us for free even if we worked for them. We were wild, black, and naughty. We had learned that we were half-castes. Our father was a famous Maharishi, but had little use for us. He was immersed in his own world of learning to care about his progeny. He was a Brahmin. My mother was of an unknown Asura caste. He kept the relationship an open secret. He knew enough of the Sanskrit Vedas, which the Brahmins claimed contained all the learning of the world. Father wasn't a bad man, really. He was like any other member of his caste, gloriously self-centered. He considered that we were suitably rewarded with his mere presence in our home. And conveniently forgot that humans need food to live, too. Oh sure, he named us after demons as we never showed any interest in his teachings. Many a time, we mocked him and ever so often, I boldly questioned his faith when he and his friends chanted the Vedas. In our mud veranda, Kumbhakarna, Sorpanaka, and I mimicked them. Only my youngest sibling, Vibhishana, watched with awe. His eyes used to be fixed on the Brahmins as he listened to their jabbering with rapt attention. This was after my father gave away all his money to my stepbrother, Kubra. We were left with nothing. Growing up was difficult. A continuous numbing ache, the kind which throbs and slowly spreads its black fingers over one's soul. Yet, we never strayed from the path of righteousness. Our sense of justice differed from what the learned and privileged considered right. We decided our righteousness and we defined our rights in our own way. We learned that the truth could be bent to suit one's needs. Our dharma was based on simple things. A man should be true to his word. He should speak from his heart and shouldn't do anything he considered wrong. One should not cheat even if one was sure to fail. One should honor women and not insult anyone. If there was injustice, we had to fight it at all costs. We never knew any of the great teachings of the ancient Asura or Deva saints. We followed no tradition. We were almost bastards. The next day, we would be leaving this island. I had heard that there are great nations to the north. I would travel across the length and breadth of India. I wanted to climb the snow-clad mountains of the Himalayas, swim against the dangerous currents of the Ganga raging in her full monsoon fury. I dreamed of passing through the thick forests of the Vindhya and Sahyas and seeing the monkey men and the kingdom of the Yakshas and Kinnaras. I dreamed of being in the music-filled world of the Gandharvas. Oh, what a world to conquer! What a life to enjoy! One day Ravana would rule the world. From the mighty Himalayas to Lanka, nay, from Lanka to the Himalayas, I would rule the world, with justice, peace, and prosperity for all. Looming in the shadows of my myriad dreams, there lingered a small doubt. Were these wonderful dreams just hunger-induced hallucinations? I might die today, caressed by the black waves and dragged by the roaring currents. My life might just flicker for a while and end in dark silence. Then who would ever know the passions and ambitions I held close to my heart? Who would know what glories I had planned for my people? My life would be just like the foam on the frothing black waters down below, soaring, ever expanding, there now but then gone into the unknown. My mother's tears burned a hole in my soul. She wanted us to go out and conquer the world, yet she wanted us nearby as well. Perhaps, she saw the fire raging in my eyes and decided not to stop us. When I looked back, I saw my mother, a hunched-back figure in tattered clothes, hugging my ugly sister. She was the most beautiful baby for us, but when I saw her with the sense of fairness my mother had instilled in us, I had to reluctantly agree with my father's belief that my sister was the ugliest creature he had ever seen. I hated him for that statement. I hated him even more for the fact that it was true. The gatekeeper of my half-brother's palace was sitting on the beach with his friends. They roared with laughter at the sight of us three teenagers struggling with the catamaran and raised a toast to our death. They even insulted my mother with indecent songs. I wanted to wring their necks. But I had promised my mother that I would not use violence until I got wise to the ways of the world and the sense to use my power with fairness and justice. I fixed my teary eyes on the distant shoreline. There lay my hope of success in this cruel world, and my guru. My brothers and I traveled through the thick, evergreen Sahaya forest. We saw glorious palaces and ports, ivory and sandalwood and peacocks and monkeys. We saw ships with kaleidoscopic colored sails sailing to distant lands, laden with gold and diamonds, pepper and spices. We saw temples where the gods resided and demanded a portion of the earnings which men strived hard to earn. And we also saw the representatives of those gods who plundered in God's name. The cities were bright with lights as brilliant as the sun and the women, beautiful like those in paradise. I saw with mixed emotions of pride, jealousy, and anger, the ships on which my half-brother's flags fluttered. Whichever city we went to, Kubra's enterprises had an office. He ran a tightly controlled business empire from his palace in the island. Equestrian messengers carried important letters to his business partners and trade guilds. He owned more than 130 ships, which sailed to Greece, Egypt, and China. I was sure any junior manager of his numerous units would have welcomed us to their gold-brocaded offices, had we identified ourselves as Kubra's siblings. But that was the last thing I wanted to do. I could have easily led a comfortable life as a clerk in any one of my half-brother's offices. It would have ensured that my family got at least one meal a day. But how could I forget the bored look in my step-brother's eyes when he dismissed us from his palace with a few gold coins? I would rather die of hunger than demean myself for a lowly job in his business empire. It might have been false pride. Many worldly wise people have said so. To get along in the world you had to be practical and satisfied with what your measly life offers. But I was a dreamer. And I did not want to just get along in this world. I wanted to own it. Why were our people so meek and humble? That was something I always wondered about. Why were only a few able to control the power and wealth while the rest obliged them, and even laid down their lives to help this small selfish gang oppress them and their children? Was it fear? I don't know. But wherever I looked, I only saw oppression. Money, caste, rituals, traditions, beliefs, and superstitions all conspired together to crush the humble majority. Why couldn't there be a more just way of living? The moment I started asking why, I was branded a hothead. The Brahmin friends of my father once tried to banish me from the village, saying I was possessed by evil spirits and that I was a Rakshasa, a demon. Perhaps I was too young and brash, and my view of the world was yet to get tempered with experience. Except for my youngest brother Vibhishana, who was always quiet, I could see the same restlessness in the rest of us. I believed Vibhishana was a bit of a nitwit. But he eyed with. Vyu was the darling of our village while we were growing up. He followed whatever was laid down in the books and never asked any questions. There were many times when I felt that Vibhishana was most suited for this society and that he was going to make it big in life. And I liked him. He was so small and vulnerable, and I always felt he needed to be protected from this cruel world. I desperately needed some confidence. I wasn't intelligent in the conventional sense either. I could not recite the Vedas backwards the way Vibhishana enjoyed doing. In any case, I thought the Vedas were a load of humbug, and it didn't matter which way you recited them. Some jobless Brahmin like my father created them thousands of years ago, instead of making themselves useful. The Brahmins prayed to the gods they themselves invented for the rain, the sun, horses, cows, and money, and many other things. It must have been very cold, from whichever cursed places they came. Otherwise, why would they croak like frogs and appeal to the gods after putting hundreds of assorted twigs into the fire? Perhaps I was prejudiced. I shouldn't think that the work they were doing, as yajanas, was useless. In fact, it served as a perfect tool to mint money and gain material favors. They were no fools, these Brahmins. They knew how to project even the mundane tasks of burning twigs as earth-shaking scientific discoveries, and claimed to tame the forces that controlled the world. And it was funny that the majority of people, like the carpenters, masons, and farmers who were doing something meaningful, had become supplicant to these jokers croaking under the warm sun, sweat pouring from their faces in front of a raging fire, and chanting God knows what. They had a yajna or a puja for everything under the sun. If you had leprosy or a common cold, there was a god to whom you had to offer a special puja to appease him. You wanted your pestering wife to elope with your bothersome neighbor, there was a puja for that too. You wanted your cow to have a calf or your wife to have son, the Brahmin would help you. He would just conduct a puja and a divine calf or son would be born. You curried favor with the Brahmins and your son would become the biggest pundit in the world by the age of 16. If not, he would perhaps become rowdy like me, who did not respect Brahmins or rituals. He would become a Rakshasa. I think there are many more Rakshasas among us now. Perhaps it was because the virus spread. Couldn't the Brahmins conduct a puja so that our heads were cleared of sinful thoughts? This is something I have to ponder over when I have time. Wherever I travel, I find impostors claiming to have direct access to God and fleecing people. It is strange how kings of antiquity suddenly became gods. How they metamorphosed into specialty gods is even more amusing. I am no atheist. I strongly believe in God and am always willing to pray for my material and spiritual progress. But for me, God is a very personal thing, and prayer needs to be spoken silently in my heart.